Kash Patel didn't stumble into controversy. He walked straight into it the moment he was asked one simple question he couldn't answer. And that's where everything starts to unravel. Because when a man who once demanded total transparency is suddenly unable to recall even the most basic details about the very files he championed, something deeper is going on. And the more you listen, the more the cracks widen, revealing a story that isn't just political. It's unsettling. He was once the loudest voice insisting that the infamous Black Book should be publicly rolled out on day one.
That you were pressured by the Attorney General to place 1,000 personnel on 24-hour shifts to mine roughly 100,000 Epstein-related records to redact President Trump's name from the files. Bloomberg reported this, that you directed FBI special agents from the New York and Washington field offices to join the Bureau's FOIA employees in Winchester and another building a few miles away, and that while reviewing the Epstein files, FBI personnel identified numerous references to Trump in the documents, and people familiar with the matter said that Trump's name, along with other high-profile individuals, was blacked out. Now, the New York Times reports, and this is a quote, Justice Department officials diverted hundreds of FBI employees and federal prosecutors from their regular duties to go through the documents at least 4 times, including once to flag any references to Mr. Trump and other prominent figures. Details of the review were based on accounts by 3 former FBI and Justice Department officials who spoke on condition of anonymity because of fears of retaliation, and further that the FBI finished after they finished its review of the files and materials, was sent to a team of Justice Department lawyers who double-checked the FBI's redactions and, quote, were instructed to flag any mentions of Mr. Trump and other celebrities. Now, I have 3 questions for you, Mr. Patel, about this. First, how many times did President Trump's name appear in the Epstein files? Was it more than 100, more than 1,000? Were the agents who were pulled from their duties to redact the president's name from the Epstein files working on criminal cases or national security cases or child sex trafficking cases? And are the number of agents that have been reported diverted for these purposes, is that accurate?
No.
No what?
You asked if it was accurate. I said it wasn't.
So you're saying that none of this happened? That,
No, I'm saying it was inaccurate.
okay. How many times did President Trump appear in the Epstein files? More than 100? More than 1,000?
No, and what we've been able to release is what we've been legally able to release, and that has
No,
been
that's not
provided
the
to
question.
public.
I asked you, how many times did the president's name appear?
I don't know.
It's your testimony. You do not know that
The
answer.
number of times, no.
Could you tell us how many agents were diverted for this task and what they were working on?
When you say diverted, you make it seem as if agents were pulled off what they do all the time. Agents at the FBI masterfully do double duty and triple duty. And because of the public's interest in this case, we flexed resources to make sure that we could answer the public's signal demand. So do you want us to look through the material and provide it to you, or you do not want us to do that?
So it's
Which
your,
one is it?
it's your testimony that no one was diverted from a criminal matter, that this was a top priority to go through these, this material to look for Mr. Trump's name. Is that your testimony? That's the highest priority for the FBI?
What's one of the most impressive things about the FBI leadership and the careers that are in place is that they make the decisions on who to send where on priorities and make sure the mission needs are not hurt. And that's what happened here.
It's shocking to me that the FBI would think that erasing Mr. Trump's name from the Epstein files is a high priority when we have crime, we have national security threats, we have terrorism threats, we have murders such as that occurred, unfortunately, with Mr. Kirk. It's shocking to hear that that's your highest priority. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I
That's
yield
literally
back.
not what I said.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
No hesitation, no second guessing, no caveats. But in the hearing room, under oath, that same certainty vanished. The confidence, the defiance, the big promises gone. What remained was a man dodging, deflecting, and shrinking under questions he should have been ready for. And that sudden shift raised one question louder than any other. What changed? It all began when Patel was pressed to give a number, just a number, about how many times a certain high-profile name appeared in the Epstein files. Was it more than 100? More than 1,000? Was it mentioned frequently, rarely, or somewhere in between? He didn't have to explain the context. He didn't have to justify anything. He just had to answer. But instead of clarity, the committee got something else entirely. No, it's inaccurate. I don't know. He repeated variations of the same vague denials until the room shifted from curiosity to disbelief. Because a man who once preached full disclosure suddenly couldn't remember a single detail about the records he'd spent years talking about. And here's where things got even more unsettling. Because while he dodged the numbers, other reports painted a completely different picture. Whistleblowers claimed thousands of FBI personnel were pushed into round-the-clock file review shifts. News outlets described massive diversion of manpower from criminal and counterterrorism units. Sources familiar with the matter said that during these reviews, specific high-profile individuals' names were flagged and scrubbed from documents. The details varied depending on who you asked, but they all pointed to one overwhelming theme. Something was happening behind the scenes that the public wasn't supposed to see. Now, Patel insisted that these reports were inaccurate. But when asked to specify what part was wrong, or how many agents were actually reassigned, or what they were pulled away from, he didn't answer. He redirected. He reframed. He used phrases like flexing resources or meeting public demand, as if shifting hundreds of agents off their criminal cases was just standard office scheduling. But that wasn't what the committee needed. They needed clarity, accountability, numbers. Instead, they got avoidance. And this is where the story deepens. Because the conversations around Epstein's network were never just about gossip or celebrity drama. They were about abuse, power, manipulation, and silence. Every unanswered question leaves another survivor unheard. Every redaction hides another trail. Every diverted agent is one less investigator working a trafficking case that might save a life. And when resources are shifted away from protecting vulnerable people and toward protecting powerful ones, something has seriously gone wrong. Patel tried to argue that no one was diverted, that agents at the Bureau regularly handle multiple duties. But even that explanation didn't match the reports. If hundreds, possibly more, were moved to sift through records repeatedly, then what cases were left waiting? What leads grew cold? What investigations stalled? When he framed it as simple resource flexing, it only highlighted how casually manpower may have been reshuffled away from crimes that desperately needed attention. Because whether you call it diverting or flexing, the outcome is the same. Fewer eyes on real victims, more eyes on protecting certain reputations. And that's the part no one in the room was willing to ignore. Zoe Lofgren pressed harder. She didn't let the evasion slide. She didn't let the circular answers in the conversation. She laid out the contradictions clearly. What was said publicly versus what was done privately, what whistleblowers described versus what leadership claimed. And the more she confronted Patel, the more disjointed his responses became. The irony was impossible to miss. A man who demanded openness now insisted he couldn't recall. A man who pushed for exposure now dodged specifics. And the public, watching all of this unfold, saw something they weren't supposed to see. A system bending to protect someone at the top rather than delivering justice at the bottom. Because the Epstein files are not ancient history. They're not rumors whispered in the dark. They're not a footnote in a courtroom transcript. They represent real people who suffered in ways most can't imagine. They represent networks of power that insulated predators for years. And when the government, any government, begins choosing which names matter and which names don't, that's not transparency. That's selective protection. And selective protection is dangerous. The committee's biggest concern wasn't the number of mentions. It wasn't even the redactions alone. It was the idea that federal law enforcement, already overwhelmed by violent crime, trafficking cases, and national security threats, may have been pressured to prioritize political loyalty over public safety. Because if even a fraction of the whistleblower claims are accurate, then agents who should have been stopping violent offenders were instead combing through thousands of documents to sanitize records that the public was promised would be revealed in full. That's not just a bureaucratic choice. That's a moral one. And what makes it even more unsettling is how familiar this pattern feels. Power protects power. Institutions shield the people who control them. Truth becomes optional when the consequences are inconvenient. And transparency becomes a performance rather than a principle. Patel's evasiveness wasn't just uncomfortable, it was revealing. You don't avoid easy questions unless the truth behind them leads somewhere dangerous. You don't forget details you once championed unless those details might expose a contradiction. And you don't downplay resource diversion unless the scale of it would shock the public, because the core of this story isn't confusion. It's control, the power to decide what the public sees, the power to reshape narratives, the power to redraw evidence in real time. And when that power is used to protect someone instead of protecting the public, accountability dies in silence. The hearing exposed something larger than one official's memory lapses. It showed a government apparatus bending away from justice. It showed institutions more concerned with reputation than truth. And it showed how fragile transparency becomes when it threatens people who sit near the top. That's why this moment matters. Not because of one name in a file, but because of what it reveals about the system handling that file. When leaders claim transparency but practice secrecy, when agencies claim integrity but hide evidence, when officials claim honesty but dodge basic questions, then the public isn't dealing with a justice system anymore. They're dealing with a hierarchy built to protect itself. And that's what makes Lofgren's questioning so important. She refused to let the inconsistencies slide. She refused to let the contradictions bury themselves under vague answers. She refused to let political pressure erase the truth. In a room full of rehearsed lines and polished talking points, she was the only one who demanded answers that actually mattered, because this isn't just about files. It's about trust. And when a government begins rewriting reality to shield power, the people lose more than just answers. They lose faith. What happened in that room was more than political theater. It was a reminder of how high the stakes really are. And it left one unavoidable question hanging in the air like smoke. If this much resistance surrounds a simple question, what would happen if the full truth ever came out? If you're someone who believes in accountability, real transparency, and justice that reaches every corner, including the powerful ones, then stick with this channel. There's a lot more to uncover, and this story is far from over. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter. The truth deserves an audience, and you're part of it.